an assumption of a 10-year lifespan. I think that's a reasonable assumption based on what we've seen for our service records on there. But in the calculations, I actually have it as a 20-year lifespan. So there'll be a little modification of the calculations in the next iteration of this document. What I went on to do with the calculations that are in the document you have is I guess what I would consider a very basic or rudimentary calculation of what the reserves would be under one scenario. It's a very simple approach that I think the example that I give here, if you have an asset that has what you assume to be a 10-year useful life, and you're in year 5 of that life, and you determine that it's a $1,000 asset, then you would have $500. You would have half that amount because in your reserve, because you're halfway to when you expect to replace that. So that's the calculation that goes on in this document, where essentially we take each component, each pipe, each main, the various items, calculate how far along they are in their service life, multiply that by their current value, and that would be the reserve amount. And just to give everyone here kind of some broad brush numbers of what we're dealing with here, sewer and water each, we have about $23 million present value in our sewer system, about $23 million in our water system. The sewer system, about 70% of our sewer system was installed prior to 1980. With the water system, about 20% was installed prior to 1980. There are a couple of maps and documents that give you a sense for where geographically in the village the mains are in these different eras, if you will. What we then, by that basic calculation, what we arrive at is if we were simply going to try to have in the bank what we ought to have based on that rationale, what that would mean for our water system is that today we would have something on the order of $7.1 million in our reserve. With the sewer system, and I'll combine here the conventional sewer system and our grinder pump system, that we'd have something $9.1 million in reserve. Again, if we're attempting to have in the bank, 1. Did I get that right? 8.6.
Yeah, 8.6, I think is what you have.
Right, and then there's another $500,000 in our local.
Oh, you're adding it together.
So that, I mean, that's a big number. That's a lot. I don't think that there are any communities that budget and actually have available that sort of reserve to be on the ready to replace these things the day that they reach the end of their estimated useful life.
This is just utilities. Also, you haven't done the streets.
Correct. The streets are not reflected in here. Real estate's not in here. This building. I focused on, I guess, what I knew had the best handle on. Our roads really, we're fortunate, we're much more fortunate than for nearly any other community that because the percentage of the roads that the village maintains is relatively small, for the most part, we're able to maintain our roads almost exclusively with what we get from motor fuel tax. Bruce is always reminding us, and I think he's right, that we should always have enough in reserve that if there were a sudden or catastrophic failure of one of the roads, either flood washes out a big chunk of road, something like that happens, we ought to be able to make those repairs. But nonetheless, for our regular maintenance, the MFT goes a long, long way to keeping us current on the roads.
It's beautiful. Motor fuels, absolutely correct.
Correct. So, the how long will it last is kind of a difficult, it's not a terribly difficult number to estimate. The hard thing then to come up with, at least in my estimation, is the final question of how do we want to budget for and ultimately pay for replacement of these assets as they decline. And that's where we get into the policy issues. Again, you can try to have it all in the bank and pay for it as soon as it needs to be done. You can always, of course, borrow for all or a portion of these.
Which means you have to raise taxes. So.
Right, and these are then certainly considerations for the board as to what position you want to be in. What I can tell you is a couple of things to bear in mind beyond what's in here. I handed out today, I got from Ernie and Susie, going back 5 years, our water main break history on the oldest part of Maine, over the golf course area, Saunders Road area. So that we should have one loose map in there that I believe it came to 10 main breaks in the last 5 years. Total out to cost us, using Lake County to make those repairs, right around $50,000. So certainly right now, we are not, hemorrhaging money from the water fund repairing these mains. Bill Spotty pointed out correctly that in that area, we had for years, back in the 90s, there were about recurrent breaks on a number of those sections that were becoming very, very problematic. We had targeted those sections and did replace them. You can see that on the maps that you have, that West Course, East Course, some Saunders Road, those are shown as being more recent generations in the midst of all that old infrastructure. We just replaced a small section at West Course and Saunders that, as part of the culvert replacement. So I don't see that we have a particular urgent repair that needs to be made there. One thing that we're trying to truth out is I'm working with Chief Gasky and the fire department to see if there is any correlation between engineer testing that they do at the fire station, or previously they voluntarily put a moratorium on that as we investigate this, to see if there is in fact a correlation between activities at the fire station and the breaks that we have. If in fact that bears out, that they do seem to be related, I think that does argue toward taking a closer look at replacing some of these mains. I don't think the village wants to be in a position where we can't exercise the hydrants without breaking the water.
Yeah, some of that section is asbestos pipe, is that right?
It's asbestos concrete pipe. Much of the older main is very much in style in the 60s. It's not poisonous. It's not dangerous. It's legitimate and approved
Asbestos is
EPA.
where the people.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
The trade name for it at the time was transite, and that's what we usually throw out. And it's problematic for us more so because it's very, very brittle. And sometimes if you have abrupt changes in pressure or direction of flow in the pipes, these brittle mains, they just crack. They're problematic. The newer mains that we put in with either ductile iron or PVC are less prone to those problems.
If that pipe cracks, is there any health hazard?
There's a health hazard anytime you have a main break, particularly if you have to depressurize the main to make that repair. Generally speaking, it's not, you don't issue a boil order with every main break because water, it's flowing out. You don't have material coming out.
The question is, can asbestos fiber enter the water system? If there's any,
No, I'm not aware of any EPA issues with the asbestos. I think that's usually more of an air hazard. I'd be happy to follow up with EPA and see if they see any real.
But again, there is the issue like Michigan with the asbestos leaching out from the Mount Lucky.
I'll investigate. I'll get with our EPA folks and see if they determine, or if they have determined that there's increased risk to asbestos concrete pipe.
Because there are beaches in Lake Michigan, Waukegan, and Monroe, you can't go, asbestos essentially.
Yeah, that certainly warrants investigation. We also have an enormous amount of transite sewer in the village. I think that's probably, at least it seems less problematic.
We're not reds.
Let's go ahead. By the way, hopefully.
Are there any advances that are coming that will make available a much greater pipe with durability? You've gone from, it started with wood all the way through to PVC.
PVC seems to be the one that's really coming to the forefront. There are actually new versions. The latest one that's come across the pipe now is fusible PVC. The PVC pipes we put in today have a big collar on them that mechanically holds the pipe segments together. They've now come up with a technology where you can actually basically melt the ends together and fuse these pieces, and that fusion is actually stronger than the pipe itself. So we get a lot of push from the folks that sell that pipe to